Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, Maverick family. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Great to have everybody here. Welcome, new viewers from all over the planet. Just checking our other streams going out here tonight. It looks like we might have just a little bit of an internet problem, but we're getting things rectified over there. On the main feed, we're looking pretty good. I think we can get things rectified here fairly easily. So much to talk about tonight. Let me just make sure we've got this other feed going so that people watching on the other streams don't miss a thing. Computer's kind of sluggish tonight. The internet's a little sluggish too. Yeah, we're broadcasting. Looks like we're broadcasting. I just need to add this back in again. Add the feed. And there we are. All right, ladies and gents, I think we are in business. Sorry about that, folks, on our secondary live stream feed. Computer's very, very sluggish tonight. In any event, let's cut to the chase, shall we? Lots of stuff to talk about. Going to kind of review some of the stuff that's been happening this past week and look at the rise of Vivek Ramaswamy, one of Trump's main challengers for the GOP nomination. We'll, what else do I have for you tonight? Alex Jones, is he a hero? Just earlier this week, he was predicting more COVID lockdowns and mask mandates. Now saying that that is not going to happen. And I'll explain why he is declaring, in a way, a sort of victory on the COVID lockdown front. So let me take a brief break here. I'm going to run a couple of promos and get this other secondary feed fired up properly. Sorry about the delay here, folks. Just have to deal with this technical problem. It didn't catch. And I'd like the other folks on the other streams to be able to pick this up properly. So stick with me. I will be right back after this.
Hello, world. Are you awake? Uniting humankind by liberating millions of minds at a time. Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, I'm back, and I think the secondary stream should be running. It's just not flying into the window there. So my apologies to people on live stream too. There it is. It finally caught. Okay. And welcome everybody again to the Maverick News Channel. Thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. A lot of stuff going on. Again, for those of you who missed our first opener, is Alex Jones a hero? He was predicting more COVID lockdowns, more COVID mask mandates earlier this week, now saying that the whole thing has been delayed or stalled or maybe even stopped, saying that it's because of his broadcast, I guess. So we'll take a look at that. We'll look at the rise of Vivek Ramaswamy, one of Trump's main challengers. He's doing that, I think, through very bold statements. Very bold indeed. And we'll look at the fallout from Trump's arrest in Georgia this past week. And Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner fighting force in Russia, his plane went down, now confirmed through DNA evidence, dead. So we'll take a look at that tonight as well. And a few other things too, but those are the sort of the main things we're going to tackle here this evening. We're going to just kind of take a look back at this crazy week that we had. And it was pretty crazy. It's hard to keep things in perspective sometimes. Things are moving so fast with the wildfires and the politics, the polarization of the country, emotions running high. You know, and Trump not appearing at the GOP debate. I don't know. Some people saying, yeah, good idea. It was a good idea for him not to go to the GOP debate. I'm not so sure. I think in the end, everything sort of remained about the same, except for, you know, it's not really quite true. Overall, things haven't changed a lot. Trump still kind of has his big lead over the other candidates, at least in the polls. But I think that Vivek Ramaswamy gained the most, has been gaining the most, not just through the debate, but just overall over the last number of weeks. You know, when he went to the state fair, I think he gained ground there. DeSantis kind of took it on the chin because Trump was focused on DeSantis and took the wind out of Ron DeSantis' sails, because he sees DeSantis as his main rival. But Vivek Ramaswamy, he's not really on Trump's radar in the same way. So he's not being targeted by Trump, yet he's polling very close to DeSantis. He's absolutely a threat in that way. And Trump, he's not a shoo-in. You look at social media comments, you look at the public reaction to a lot of things. There's now finally some erosion happening to his support, his base of support even. Not his core base, which is, you know, very committed, but even within the Republican ranks, there's some erosion of support there. I see it even here in our chat. You know, some people who maybe even 6 months or a year ago were pretty hardcore Donald Trump, now still favorable, but not as quite as committed. So there's some erosion going on. And it's Vivek Ramaswamy that seems to be rising the most out of all the other candidates. And that is because he is making bold statements. He's not afraid to say things that other candidates maybe are, to take some risks. For instance, this not at the debate, but has stated that he not just doesn't want to just reform the deep state, and specifically the FBI. He would actually abolish it. That was a bold statement made this week, and I'll bring that up for you. Let's listen to what he has to say about that. This is the kind of stuff that I think is really resonating with some of the GOP. Well, I wouldn't say people within the GOP and even with some of the Trump base, because he's sounding very conservative. He's sounding almost like Trump in some ways. Just his language is more polished. And he has a different demographic base of support, but it's stuff like this that I think even the Trump supporters want to hear. And he's not terribly critical of Trump either. He's like complimentary toward Trump, not really attacking him, but almost upstaging Donald Trump. Here he is talking about the FBI and wanting to actually abolish it, like get rid of it, replace it.
Over group identity and victimhood and grievance.
Making up on victimhood.
That nobody in the world, not a nation,
ideology, wokeism,
not a corporation, not a virus is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we together will revive to save this great nation. Thank you all. God bless you. God bless your families. And God bless the United States.
Hang on.
As we transition to our Q&A, before we do, I'd like to move into our Q&A by kicking it off with a description of how I will keep that first promise that I made you. I said that in January 2033, we would tell you that we have 3 branches of government, not 4. Well, the major threat to that today is the administrative state as we know it. If George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin were walking the streets of the United States of America today, they were walking the streets of Washington, D.C., they would be aghast at what they saw. They fought a revolution to say that we, the people, decide how to settle our political differences, for better or for worse. In the old world, it was done the other way. Monarchs, church leaders, business leaders got together in the back of palace halls, and they decided what was right for the rest of society at large because they thought that we, the people, could not be trusted to sort out our own differences. But on this side of the Atlantic in 1776, we entered a different bargain. We said that for better or worse, we might get it wrong sometimes. That's okay. We, the people, decide how we settle those differences where every person's voice and vote counts equally. From climate change to racial justice to anything else, that's how we settle our differences. What happens in the course of history is from time to time that old monster, that old Leviathan, that old world rears its ugly head again. And that's the moment we live in today. We live in a 1776 moment where I'm sorry to say that in the year 2023, the people who we elect to run the government are not the ones who run the government. There's not a single standard of justice in this country. There are 2 standards of justice in the country, which brings me to the first arm of the administrative state that I have committed in my administration. We will not just reform. Reform is a false promise. I don't think the people who make that promise believe it's false. I think they're good people who fundamentally think it's true. Mostly Republicans are the ones you'll hear it from. We're going to reform a government bureaucracy. We're going to reform the administrative state. We're going to reform the FBI. I believe that's a false promise because it cannot be done. I stand not on the side of reform. I stand on the side of the American Revolution. And that is why today I am announcing formally our plan not to reform the FBI, but to actually shut it down in a way that restores the integrity of our constitutional republic. And I'd like to explain to you why this is far more practical than it actually sounds. I have to admit to you guys, this scares a lot of people when I say this. I cannot tell you the number of my former colleagues and friends who were would-be donors that say my plan to shut down agencies like the ones I'm telling you about today give them pause in supporting me. But what I tell them back is actually, you know what's extreme is actually the existence of a bureaucracy that says that we the people have no say in how our government is actually run or held accountable. So today, here's the structure of how the federal government is organized. My task here is to explain to you not only what we will do, but why it is the more practical plan than the status quo. At the local level, you have the equivalent of the Department of Justice in the form of local prosecutors. And you have the local police, the equivalent at the federal level of the U.S. Marshals. You do not have a separate investigative unit that sits in between. When that 35,000 person strong investigative bureaucracy, the FBI, sits in between, that is a formula for corruption. That is a formula for politicization. When a bureaucracy exists that should not have existed, that is a formula for rot. It is the same FBI that investigated Martin Luther King Jr. and threatened him with suicide 60 years ago on the back of illicit collected tapes that now threatens its political opponents of a different political persuasion. So the problems with this are clear. We have redundancy and waste. 35,000 employees, but only 15,000 of them are either agents or actually in investigative roles. 20,000 plus of those employees are just in so-called support roles. Think about the waste. That's an extra $1.4 billion per year just in the headcount costs for that support staff, not counting what they actually spend their money and resources on, which is about 10 times more than this. Mission creep then becomes a problem. After 9/11 in particular, the mission of this institution completely was dissolved so that it was able to creep in many different directions, taking on projects it shouldn't have taken on. And that was the formula and the road that led to the political weaponization that we see today. This is the status quo as it exists today. And I'm proud to show you this is how it will look by the end of 2025, the end of my first year of my first term. We will eliminate the FBI. It will no longer exist as an institution, but we will be able to move to the U.S. Marshals, to the DEA, to a series of enforcement agencies that have not been politicized in the same way as the FBI, a subset of the 15,000 employees that are actually conducting real work, and the remaining 20,000 will have an opportunity to search for honest work in the private sector. There's a worker shortage, last time I heard. So some businesses waiting to hire some workers. So we'll let that work itself out. The corruption investigations will move to the Secret Service. The counterintelligence investigations, which is a tiny portion of their employees, but important, I acknowledge, will move to the Defense Intelligence Agency under the DOD. And there is a white-collar investigative function at the FBI, which, as long as we have the laws on the books, need to be enforced. Move to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network that sits under the Department of Treasury. This box does not need to exist. The J. Edgar Hoover building is the name of the headquarters that they still report into. So not only do we have greater specialization now, not just generalist agents in a mission that has crept so far as to be ill-defined, but you have specialized agents that are actually good at what they do. Not only do you have specialization, you have financial savings. We're talking about billions of dollars per year in savings for us, the taxpayers. But most importantly, you have greater accountability of an institution that by its very design, in where it's sandwiched today, has escaped cabinet level accountability for too long. J. Edgar Hoover may be the one rolling over in his grave by the time we finished with this, but George Washington and Thomas Jefferson will lay in peace after we take this step. That's the future of the FBI. The second department that we'll begin with in January of 2025 is actually shutting down an institution that should have never existed in the first place. That is the U.S. Department of Education. This is the head of the snake when it comes to the spread of wokeism, transgenderism, indoctrination of our kids. We've been taught to believe, and there's a lot of truth to it, that it's school boards that have gone awry. And parents, I'm so proud of many parents across this country who have once again become engaged in how their kids are being educated and indoctrinated in their schools. But the hard truth is that those school boards are actually responding to economic incentives created by this department. This department should have never existed. You have actually taxpayer money from this room that pays the federal government that then supposedly sends money back to our schools, but it comes back with strings attached, right? You didn't pay your taxes in saying you only get these taxes, U.S. government, so long as you're abiding by the principles laid out in our Constitution. They're not, and they kept the money either way. But when they send the money back, they tell local schools today that you don't get that money unless you're adopting critical race theory, unless you're adopting toxic gender ideology, unless you're adopting race-based quotas in your hiring. And that is wrong. I do not believe, and this is one of the areas where I differ from my last Republican predecessor, President Trump. I do not believe we can reform this agency. This was here long, this will have been here long before I arrived, and the way the employees there see it, they'll be here long after I'm gone. That's the way they saw it when Trump came.
So we're going to, jump out of that, but you're getting the idea, okay? He says he's going to eliminate the FBI, and then it isn't exactly clear what might take its place, but it looks like it might be something similar to the FBI. Now, nevertheless, if you clean house like that, sweep something away, and then create something similar but different, I guess that's an opportunity to get rid of the deep state and attacking the Department of Education. I think the intent there is to give parents more choice in where they send their kids to school ultimately, and to address the politics that has been injected into the education system. So those are bold statements, and he's definitely getting the attention of the media and the public. Now, it doesn't stop just there. He's also been making some, how shall I put this, other bold statements on things like the election, election integrity. It says that he would have certified the 2020 election, but says that Pence missed an historic opportunity when he was asked to sort of send the ballots back, but didn't do it. So he's sort of playing both sides off against the middle. And he was on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd talking about that. I think I have a clip lined up for you with Ramaswamy speaking about just that. Yeah. Here we go. Okay. So just give me a second here. This computer is really slow tonight. All right. Here's Vivek Ramaswamy on Meet the Press. Sundays are always, a day of politics on TV. Here we
and
go.
we need government
It
issued
says they need
ID
single day
matching the
voting
voter
on
file.
election day
And if we achieve
and paper
that,
ballots.
then we have achieved victory, and we should not have any further complaint about election integrity.
So what would
I
what
would
would
have
you have
driven
done?
it through the Senate.
So what would you have done
As-
with Mike Pence? You would have
So in my
not certified
capacity-
the election?
So in my capacity as president of the Senate, I would have led through that level of reform. Then on that condition, certified the election results, served it up to the president,
Yeah.
President Trump then to sign that into law, and on January 7th, declared the re-election campaign pursuant to a free and fair election. I think that was a missed opportunity, but that's the kind
All
of
right.
spirit we're going to need to unite this country rather than
Right.
sweeping those concerns under the rug.
So those are issues that seem to be working for Vivek Ramaswamy. What about Donald Trump? Well, this past week, of course, he turned himself in at the Fulton County Jail, and they took his mugshot. Let's bring his mugshot up again, shall we? We have, I think he's still in here. Yep, we had this thumbnail for one of our videos this week. I think it was last night, actually. And there's his mugshot down there as part of that thumbnail. And the fallout from that has not been what I think the Democrats were hoping for. He almost seems to be benefiting from it with a massive surge of followers coming forward and reigniting interest in his Twitter account after Trump posting for the first time in years on Twitter with that mugshot. And it was a little bit strange because his mugshot post, when he put that up, he hadn't posted in so long that the last thing he posted was from the J6 incident. And so it goes from J6, the J6 incident, and then the next post is his mugshot. Both of them obviously related, right? And media picking up on all of this, of course. And this is a mugshot that is being seen all over the media and now also on T-shirts, merchandise. And there's his Twitter post, election interference. He says, never surrender, DonaldJTrump.com. And once again, we covered him the day that he turned himself in, and as I said, it felt very much like covering the O.J. Simpson Bronco chase. Whenever he deals with one of these matters, and he actually ends up turning himself in or being arrested, whatever, it's like it's a day of taking video of Donald Trump riding around in his presidential convoy, then flying on his plane, getting out, another procession with the Secret Service vehicles and everything to his destination, and then there he gets in his SUV and he's riding along again, and people commenting. It seems almost mindless, honestly, some of the coverage. But that's news today. And now Donald Trump is getting back in his SUV, and now he's getting on his plane, and now he's flying back to Mar-a-Lago. Also, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group, DNA has now confirmed that he was among the victims in that plane crash that we told you about this past week. We showed you the footage. And in Russia, the officials there say they have now conducted tests, DNA tests, and they have confirmed that he was on board that plane, and they say that it is him He was there. They've confirmed his identity. He is dead. And all kinds of speculation about what might have happened. Was it an accident? Was it taken down by a missile? Did Putin have him assassinated? Officials in Moscow are strongly denying those claims. During the Republican debate, all candidates debate, I think it was Nikki Haley who came right out and said that Vladimir Putin did assassinate Yevgeny Prigozhin. And of course, if you have not been following that story, he's the head of that private military group in Russia, the Wagner Group, which has been actively involved in the conflict in Ukraine. But then we saw that procession of Wagner military vehicles heading to Moscow. It was described at the time by some as some sort of mutiny, or maybe even a coup attempt. Not really clear what it was, but whatever it was certainly an embarrassment to Vladimir Putin, which is now what is giving rise to all of these rumors, this speculation that it is Putin who had Prigozhin killed. And of course, that mutiny or whatever didn't last long. It basically rolled out over a day, and then an agreement was made, and it was really largely about changes in the agreement or the situation, circumstances surrounding the use of those Wagner forces. Prigozhin was, in a way, kind of losing a big portion of his business. So it seems that was a big factor in it. And a lot of the Wagner forces were being, they were all being offered positions within the Russian military, or they could go back to civilian life. And then in the end, the Wagner group ended up in Belarus on the border there. And things are, being rejigged in the wake of Prigozhin's death. So you'll see things stabilize a bit now, regardless of whatever the truth is about that incident with the Wagner military vehicles that eventually did turn back and did not get all the way to Moscow. Now back to Trump for just a moment. I received this. I was looking at an old message that came in on Facebook, and I can't remember who it was from, but they were saying, Rick, you have to get over your worship of Trump. I don't worship Trump. I've never worshiped Trump. I worship no politician. I really never have. I was a big fan of Trump, but I don't worship him. Many people do. But I can tell you that things have changed, and his support is not quite as strong as it was. The things that it's just different. He still has a lot of support, don't get me wrong, and he's still way out in the lead, and it's his nomination to lose. But there is this whole theory that Trump is not qualified, that he's actually disqualified from running for president again because of his involvement in the J6 incident. And it's a legal argument, and Dinesh D'Souza addressed that. And I'd like to run a brief clip of Dinesh D'Souza talking about that very thing. I really like Dinesh D'Souza. I think he's a smart guy. Here he is saying that these legal arguments just don't hold water, and that Trump absolutely does have the right to run again.
Yes, but haven't gone into it. a school of thought on the left that is now trying very hard to press the argument that Trump is already disqualified from running for president in 2024. What? So this is a school that seems sort of radical in its claim. It's claiming that you don't have to wait for these trials to proceed. You don't have to wait for Trump to be convicted. You don't have to wait for judicial rulings that Trump is to be jailed, where he either cannot or finds it very difficult to run or is somehow barred from running. None of that. Trump is disqualified from running now. He's ineligible to run in 2024 already, based upon something that's in the Constitution. So who is making this argument? Well, probably its two most prominent advocates are the Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe and a Republican, or maybe former Republican judge. This is a longtime judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals. His name is J. Michael Luttig. They did a recent article, these two in The Atlantic, together, and they drew on some scholarship by two professors, William Bowdy and Michael Stokes-Paulson, essentially making the same argument. So what I want to do is focus in on the argument, and to do that, I'm turning to an interview with J. Michael Luttig in The New Yorker, in which he discloses what is the basis of his thinking. Now, what is he trying to parse or to explain or to interpret? Well, answer, he's trying to interpret Section 3 of the 14th Amendment in the Constitution. And Section 3 basically says this: if there's any official who has taken an oath to support the Constitution, and if that same official, quote, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, then you're not eligible to hold office. And essentially what Michael Luttig is saying in this interview is, there you go. Trump did in fact take an oath to support the Constitution. Trump did in fact engage in insurrection or rebellion against the same. And Trump did give aid and comfort to the enemies of the Constitution, this is presumably the people who went into the Capitol on January 6th. Now, Luttig is asked in The New Yorker the question, okay, this is what the Constitution says. The Constitution, however, was based upon, at least this amendment, the 14th Amendment, came after the Civil War. So when they were talking about an insurrection or a rebellion, they were talking about an armed effort to overthrow the U.S. government and break the country into two. In what sense is what Trump did comparable to that? And Michael Luttig here has to back off a little bit, and he says, it depends on how you interpret these terms. He agrees that these terms are not self-interpreting. There has to be a factual finding that Trump engaged in insurrection, and that Trump engaged in rebellion, and that Trump gave aid and comfort to the enemies thereof. But what he says is, look, you don't need legislation or laws to block Trump from running again. Basically, the Constitution has spoken pretty clearly. So you need a clear determination of what Trump did, but that will be sufficient. And he gives the example. He says, well, for example, the Constitution says that you need to be 35 years old to run for president. Well, you don't need a law to support that. The Constitution is clear enough. Now, he admits that engaging in insurrection or rebellion is not as clear as being 35 years old. And so he says, but nevertheless, he says, election officials around the country have the right to interpret the Constitution and say, yeah, in my opinion, this official, Trump, who took an oath to support the Constitution, did in fact engage in insurrection or rebellion. Now, you can see right away the problem with this, which is that are you going to have election officials determine for themselves, hey, guess what? I'm going to keep Trump. I'm the Secretary of State of Georgia or Pennsylvania. I'm going to keep Trump off the ballot. He's an insurrectionist. I'm not going to allow him to run. This would be crazy. Think of the implications of that. In fact, Republican officials could do exactly the same. They could pull Joe Biden off the ballot for the same reason and say, listen, he sold out the country to foreign enemies. That's a form of insurrection. He's violated the 14th Amendment. I'm not going to put him on the ballot in Texas. So a prominent judge and a professor at Stanford, Michael McConnell, has said, listen, this is nonsense. He said that there's a statute that Congress enacted. It's 18 USC 2383. And it is pretty clear in defining a little more clearly that if someone has participated in a rebellion or insurrection, then those found guilty, quote, shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. So this is a whole different matter. You have to be found guilty of rebellion or insurrection. Now, it's very important to note that Trump is not charged with rebellion or insurrection. He's charged with other things. And so this is the problem, I think, that people like J. Michael Luttig, this guy's a never Trump or he hates Trump, and he realizes that even if Trump is found guilty, all right, Trump is going to appeal. And so he can still run. He might even be jailed and be running from jail, but there's nothing to stop him, it seems, in the law. And so this is why Luttig is saying we don't need the law. We can just turn to the Constitution. And think of the anti-democratic implications of this, because it essentially gives state officials a veto power over who's on the national ticket. And yet Luttig goes on to argue, and I find this whole interview completely unconvincing. For example, here, quote, the calls to Raffensperger, we're talking about one call, but somehow it's become calls, were part and parcel of the rebellion against the United States government. What? Again, look at the call. Look at the context of the call. Trump is merely saying, I won the state. The votes are there. When he says go find them, he means go find the legal votes. And yet here's Luttig. The plan was to overturn the validly held election. Well, nobody claims the election was invalidly held. We're talking about the counting of the election. We're talking about the existence of systematic fraud. We're talking about Trump's belief that there was fraud and his desire to prove it. And then giving aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States, please.
And that's Dinesh D'Souza. So, yeah, I hear what he's saying, and I think that his argument is strong. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure the other point of view holds water. Okay, let's take a brief break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Alex Jones and pending lockdowns and mask mandates coming next month, or are they? Don't know.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, so Alex Jones came out over the past week and predicted there would be more lockdowns and mask mandates, that they were coming back in September. It was a bold statement. Bold, just like Vivek Ramaswamy, only bolder. A lot of bravery there on Alex Jones's part, making a statement like that. And Chris Sky was on InfoWars over the past week as well. And he also made that prediction. He's touring the U.S. right now and is carrying that message, or has been. But now things have changed. Here's a mass email going out from Alex Jones saying that Biden's plan to bring back lockdowns has stalled thanks to word of mouth. What he's claiming here is that because of the prediction he made on his channel, millions of people saw it, according to him, and as a result, the government has decided to roll back its plans to bring the mask mandates back. Now, okay, so you can make of that what you want. The CDC And the government denied that it was ever happening at all. So we know that the Transportation Security Administration managers there were told August 15th that by mid-September, they, along with airport employees, will again be required to wear face masks. That's the claim that one of the claims that Alex Jones made, and that by mid-October, the policy will apply to travelers as well. And in addition to that, the managers were told that COVID-19 lockdowns would be back by December. So that's what Alex Jones was saying. So apparently, the government has come out, TSA has came out with a statement saying that no such announcement was ever made. An agency spokesperson for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has issued a now expired travel mask mandate in 2021, also refuted those rumors. The claim originated on, actually, this goes back a little bit, all the way back to August 18th. And then Chris Sky also doubling down on this just within the past week. So the government's just basically saying, nope, no such thing was ever going to happen. Although they did run some media clips on InfoWars, which did not make exactly these claims, but they did point to certain organizations that seemed to be on the cusp of bringing mask mandates and other measures back. So the Alex Jones show, again on the edge, trying to predict tomorrow's news today, and still claiming that this was a thing that is absolutely going to happen, pointing to the two new COVID variants, EG5 and BA.2.86. And as I said, you can't make this stuff up. If you take EG5 and look at it backwards, it's 5G. It's 5G. Does somebody have a sick sense of humor? Because, of course, some people believe that if you get the thing in the arm and you're exposed to 5G, really, really bad things will happen to you. And so here they are calling it EG.5. Wow. So as of August 23rd, according to the government, the latter had only been reported in Denmark. This is the BA.2.86. South Africa, Israel, the US, and the UK. That from the CDC. Health Canada confirmed that as of August 18th, no cases have been detected here in this country. But Canada has seen a steady increase of EG5 cases. World Health Organization reported that in early August, its risk to global public health is low. So, according to the government, COVID-19 hospital admissions are rising. There were 12,613. This is U.S. numbers for the week ending August 12th. That's far lower than past peaks, like the 44,000 weekly hospital admissions in early January. And again, these are government stats. And the nearly 45,000 in late July 2022, or the 150,000 admissions during the Omicron surge of January 2022. But, there are certainly people out there who would love, we all know it, would love to have these restrictions re-implemented, not just for health reasons, but for other reasons as well. Nevertheless, the government denies that any of this was ever going to happen. Alex Jones doubling down and claiming victory of sorts, saying that the reason it's not happening is because he reported tomorrow's news today, or actually next month's news this month, predicting that it was going to happen. And now that it's not happening, he's saying it's because they reported it, and then so many people saw the report and then shared the information out that they decided not to do it. So you can decide. And that way, some people are viewing Alex Jones again as something of a hero. And I took note of the American Liberty Awards. And I believe this is Matt Baker. He's a comedian nominated for Best Comic at the American Liberty Awards this month. And here he is talking about Alex Jones and referring to him in exactly that way, as something of a hero. Let's listen to what he had to say about the man, Alex Jones. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. That was Matt Baker at the American Liberty Awards. And it looks like we have an audio issue. Do we have an audio issue? Or not? Can you hear me all right? Tell me in the chat. No audio on the video. Well, that's weird because I could hear it. Okay, well, sorry about that, guys. I'm not going to bother requeuing it. It was Matt Baker, and he said that he loves Alex Jones. That's strange. I don't know why I didn't pick up the audio, because it was certainly up. Yeah, let me check that. You guys. I'll bring it back. Let me just requeue him. Here we go. Here we go. I'll bring him back. Don't worry. Here he comes. Let's see if we can get the audio this time. And I'm going to roll this, and you guys tell me if you can hear him. All right, and there's the clip. Can you hear this? Got audio? Can you hear him? Can't hear that? Okay. Well, it isn't that important, so we won't try running it again. Hopefully, these other clips will run with audio. Enough. Enough trying to do that. What else can we talk about tonight? I'll tell you what, I'll take a little break. I'm going to test a couple of things over the next 30 to 60 seconds, and I will be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so everybody's still talking about the wildfires in Lahaina, in Hawaii, emotions running high, all kinds of theories about how the fires might have started, who's responsible. I can tell you that there are lawsuits. Another lawsuit, I believe, now has also been launched against the utility company there. A lot of attention now, a lot focused on the power company. Some 800 hydro poles were damaged in the Lahaina incident. The assertion from claimants is that the power company did not de-energize the power lines when they were supposed to. And when the high winds hit, some of those power lines came down, remained energized, were sparking, and caused fires in various locations. Not only are we talking about 800 different hydro poles, we're also talking about some 300 substations, apparently, is what I read today. And another lawsuit leveled against the power company from the family of one of the victims. The names this week of some 388 missing people have now been released as well. That is to, I think, give some, I wouldn't say, I don't know. The investigators say they feel that by releasing those names, it will assist in their investigation as they try to locate missing people. I'm seeing all kinds of crazy numbers being reported. For a while, if the reports were that there were about 1,000 people missing, and now I'm seeing claims as high as 2,400. But I don't put a lot of stock in anything until I get confirmation. So I do know that 388 names were released, and there may be more people than that still missing. And just over 100 people have been confirmed dead, and some 388 still missing. So the search for those people continues tonight. In Canada, the wildfires in the north and the west, they continue. There's been a heat warning in place for a number of areas in the Northwest Territories, including one community where wildfires are blazing just about a kilometer from the town's center. Environment Canada and the government of the Northwest Territories has issued 5 heat warnings today for Fort Liard, Fort Providence, Fort Simpson, Wrigley, and the Hay River regions. There are air quality issues in Vancouver tonight, so there are concerns there. These warnings come as the territorial government turns its attention to the communities around Hay River. This is a town along the south shore of Great Slave Lake. About 3,500 people live there. And in recent days, Hay River has increasingly come under threat from ongoing wildfires. And as we've seen in some of these communities, especially in Scotch River and Shuswap, we've seen conflicts between some residents who do not want to leave, have not left in spite of evacuation orders, and police who have been given the task of securing dangerous areas and blocking access on roadways, which is honestly standard procedure when there are fires burning or hazardous areas, to block off areas. And we've seen head-on confrontations between people who say they're bringing aid in, and I can certainly understand the concerns that people are having there, and it's giving, how shall I put this? The government is under pressure, has been under pressure to adopt stay and defend policies for people who want to remain behind and fight fires on their own properties. And they have been allowing people to remain in place. But if they do that, they're being asked to stay put, not roam around. And as we saw also during that confrontation, when we ran you that video, the people confronting police were told that if they took an online course, they would be put to work helping to fight fires. But I'm not exactly sure why. It didn't seem like they were listening to that. They didn't seem to want to entertain that idea at all. They just wanted to get through the roadblock. And police were not letting anybody through because of safety reasons. And then, according to police, and we read you the RCMP media release where they said that they were threatened by some of these people. And so as a result, because of the threats leveled against from some of the people who showed up on scene, they were threatening the cops and threatening the firefighters, apparently. And so they pulled the firefighters out. Some people are saying that's a lie. I wasn't there. I can only tell you what people are saying, and that's what was said. I can also say that there have been a lot of videos produced with a lot of people saying a lot of things. One of the videos that came out this week was from a guy who says a fire hydrant was shut off in British Columbia, giving rise to a lot of suspicion. And I know that people have lost trust in government and our institutions. The claim being made here is basically that the water was shut off on purpose because they want the towns to burn to the ground. And you can draw other conclusions from that if you want. Anyway, this is the video that I saw and has been going viral. And this I saw a couple of days ago. And then I did a little bit of investigating, and I was, trying to find out why this fire hydrant might not have any water running to it. Anyway, there's an answer for this, and I don't even have to be the one to tell you. So I'm going to first run this, and then I'm going to run this other one to give you a different perspective on this, because around here we are about trying to get people as close to the truth as possible. And that means not just telling one side of the story or the other side. It's about giving you as much information as we can provide so that you get a full perspective and you can then draw your own conclusions. So I'm seeing a lot of videos like this, which of course draw the credibility of government and even our first responders, their credibility and their commitment to public safety into question. Here we go.
Your Instagram could tell me why there's no water in the water hydrant.
So fun fact, did you know not every fire hydrant has a Fire Steve here, and let's talk a little bit about fire hydrants and water supply. Now, first,
I apologize. Hang on. This is just this computer. Hang on. Okay, so I don't have to run the whole thing. Let's get this back up here. And yes, it starts off. That's the video that we're talking about. And then this is the response from this firefighter, a professional firefighter.
Fire Steve here, and let's talk a little bit about fire hydrants.
Explanation for you, or a possible explanation. So here it is again.
Graham could tell me how to why there's no water in the water hydrant.
So fun fact, did you know not every fire hydrant has a pressurized water source? What's up, peeps? Fire Steve here, and let's talk a little bit about fire hydrants and water supply. Now, first, let's talk about typical fire hydrants and their water flow. Now, typically, most fire hydrants are going to be color-coded as to what volume of water they can supply. So this one's red. Keep that in mind. Now, here's a color coding chart that's typical for most municipalities. Not everyone uses it, but for the most part, they do. So blue is your best, blue, water, wet. Green is 1,000 gallons per minute or more, orange being the next one, and red being the worst flow out of all the hydrant colors that there are. Now, what do we know from that clip? Well, this is the town of Callista, according if we're using the tag that's in that video. And it doesn't look very big. It looks kind of like a subdivision that's outside of a larger town. That larger center probably being Scotch Creek, which is right here, which is across the lake from Sorrento. One thing I'm unsure about, because I'm not from that area, is which areas are supplied by municipal water source, which areas have a water treatment plant with a pressurized system. Because why that's important is some areas will run off something called a dry hydrant. So it'll look like a regular fire hydrant. It'll look like, oh, if I open the valve, it's going to start spraying water. But the way they work is a tanker, tender, and a fire engine can tie onto that. It's going to create suction. They're going to have a tube or a pipe that goes down into the lake to draw water off of. Now, typically the reason why these dry hydrants are put in place is so that way the fire apparatus don't have to back down towards the lake, run a whole bunch of hose down. It gives them a really quick place to fill up. They still need to require that suction from the pump in order to draw that water up and through, but it gives them a quicker place to fill. But that would explain why this hydrant in this video would not have any flow coming out of it. Some of the other reasons could be too that if it is tied into the municipal system, that the water treatment plant was down. There could be a few different explanations for it, or there could be a valve up the line that's been shut as well.
So there's an explanation. Could be a lot of different things. Again, let's take a little break here. We'll come back and reconvene on the other side of this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
This was also kind of a rough week because we lost Sheila Lewis. She needed a transplant. She was denied that transplant because she did not consent to being vaccinated. And that is a government policy in Canada still today. So efforts were underway to raise enough money to pay for her operation in the United States, where she did find a hospital and a doctor who was willing to perform the operation she needed, but never got that far. And this week she passed away while on the waiting list in Canada. And so I thought we'd bring this clip of Sheila up and then also talk about a public awareness campaign that has been launched by the National Citizens Inquiry as a result of Sheila's death this week. This is Sheila. We've told you about her many times. And, well, let's just listen to what she had to say during the NCI.
And I'm going to plead with you, please. Please, for the love of God, give people their transplants. They're not asking for anything else. They just want the gift of life. If it's there and it's possible, please give it. I don't want to die. God help me. And I'm going to plead with you, please. Please, for the love of God, give people their transplants.
So, Michelle Leduc Caitlin with the NCI has produced this statement saying that the NCI has This Is Canada flyers now available in honor of Sheila Lewis, who recently passed away this week. And we'll bring this up so that you can find out what that's all about.
Hello again, everyone. I am back out on the streets of Ottawa with my This Is Canada flyers. I am highly motivated today to get out and make sure that the testimony of the National Citizens Inquiry is shared, is watched. And my motivation today is the passing of Sheila Lewis. So for those of you who haven't yet watched her testimony, who don't yet know her story, she is a brave Canadian woman who was denied a life-saving organ transplant for a long time, and only because she would not submit to the experimental injection known as the COVID-19 vaccine. She testified at the National Citizens Inquiry, and her testimony is possibly the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen. And it is up to each one of us to find the moral courage to bear witness to her testimony and then to share it, to make sure that everyone in this country knows this story, knows the story of what happened here in Canada and how we lost our compassion, how we lost our humanity. So today, I'm asking you to go to nationalcitizensinquiry.ca/testimony, print out these flyers. You can now find them in French as well, so we can get this story across the country. Print out the flyers, go door to door, put them in people's mailboxes, maybe put a note on the back with Sheila Lewis's name. You know, watch Sheila Lewis, search for Sheila Lewis. You'll find her front and center among the many brave, courageous witnesses that testified. But today, I ask you to honor Sheila Lewis by watching and sharing her testimony. For the National Citizens Inquiry, I'm Michelle Leduc Catlin.
That's a dose of truth. That's for sure. Yeah. Stand for truth. Real truth. Don't trade one set of lies for another. Stand for real truth. That's how we get back. It's the only way. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So later this week, we will have Sean Buckley from the National Citizens Inquiry on this program. I believe that's happening Tuesday. So we look forward to that interview. That's something we've been setting up for a long time, waiting for that to happen. So I'm excited to have Sean on. And we'll talk about Sheila. We'll talk about where things stand with the National Citizens Inquiry. Of course, we carried that live every day, front to back, top to bottom, full-blown coverage every single day at every stop right here on the Maverick News Network. And now we have to see if those efforts will reap any benefits. So we'll get an update from Sean this week. Of course, the NCI was not binding in any way. Anything that comes out of that would only provide guidance or recommendations to government, and then it's up to the government to respond, if at all. Unfortunately, as we saw, the government did not participate, nor did, when I say that, I mean no government agencies, no level of government at all participated in the National Citizens Inquiry. At least with the Emergencies Act inquiry, we had people from all sides, all stakeholders had a voice there to some degree. People still not happy with the outcome overall, as we all know. But the NCI, it was frustrating. It continues to be frustrating because the federal government just won't engage. The provinces won't engage. Even the municipalities across this country will not engage in conversation. They would not even participate in the NCI proceedings. Now, there were some issues, I guess, with even, sort of within the NCI. Some people had some procedural concerns. There were some concerns about Preston Manning, sort of the figurehead, taking an additional role on, a paid role with government out in, I believe, Alberta, where he was paid to run a separate inquiry out there. So there were some people who were concerned about the overall look of that. But, overall, it seemed like it was a very well-run inquiry. And a lot of stories, and I think a lot of truth came out of it. I think for the most part, most of the testimony that came out was how shall I put this? It was personal accounts, you know. It wasn't just experts. It was people telling their stories, how the government response to the pandemic affected them and their lives, their jobs, their families, their kids, their schools. And I think even just that made it a success because at least it gave voice to the voiceless in that way. Because with all the censorship that has taken place, people who otherwise would have no other way to express themselves and their concerns and their stories, the NCI provided that. And that alone made the whole thing worthwhile. And in our own small way, we helped with that, I guess, because we had you guys here. You were participating and providing feedback through the chat and the call-in portions of the program that we had. And then we were able to distribute the NCI to many, 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 many more people and get the message out to an even broader audience than they would have been able to do on their own. So I was glad we were able to do that and participate. And speaking about the impact on kids, I was speaking to a friend, and I won't mention names here today in a phone conversation, and he has a couple of little girls, and he was talking about all the school they missed during the pandemic. And he noticed because, over the summer, he's been spending, of course, more time with his kids. And he mentioned that their education has been stunted because they've missed so much school. And so he's worried that his daughters are behind on their reading skills and their math skills in particular. So he's making an extra effort to provide some tutoring at home, even over the summer, to kind of bring them back up to speed. But he says, the school board, well, the teachers even, they don't seem to be either equipped or maybe even just don't care enough to sort of address this. And I would imagine that all the teachers across all the grade levels are running into issues with regard to exactly this. Kids missing so much school that their progress has been stunted. I mean, when you miss a year of in-class learning and you're in grade 1 or grade 2, those are formative years. I don't know how you get that back. The kids are like sponges, when they're young human beings. You soak up information like crazy when you're just a really young kid. As you get older, it becomes more and more difficult to get information into the old noggin. Trust me. I know. What did I have for lunch? I can't remember. The kids, man, they're the ones who have suffered more than we know because it's hidden. You see a kid on the street, I don't have kids in school anymore. When I see kids around, I don't honestly, I don't think much about it because I don't have kids in school. I just see smiling kids out playing. But there's a gap there for all of them, I don't think government fully appreciated what they did to those kids during the pandemic. It's inexcusable. We have almost lost an entire generation because of what the government did, the way they handled the pandemic. The lockdowns, telling kids, oh, you got to stay home, the masks, and just the whole thing. And as a result, you have a whole generation that's almost probably a couple of years behind in their education. I don't know how you make that up, man. If you kind of go from grade 1 to grade 4, and over, a couple of years, you don't have in-class learning, and there's a lot of stuff that you're not exposed to, information, books, math lessons. You think back to those early primary school years, those basic skills that you soak up, reading and writing. right? Reading and writing and arithmetic. And if you don't get that, then I remember that I got sick when I was a kid for about a week, and I missed some key lessons in math class in like grade 2. And because I missed those lessons, I struggled for a long time, over the next couple of years, because there was always this gap that kept coming up in the math classes. It took me a while to kind of catch that up and fill in that gap, because it's like a domino effect, right? So just from that little experience, I know what that can be like. And I have a lot of concerns about where we're going to end up with our children and their education, or lack thereof, in the years ahead. It won't just affect us, in the short run. I think the kids who went through this, they're going to suffer in a variety of different ways years down the line. The ones who aren't able to kind of fill in that gap. Very, very difficult for kids. It's like babies too, they just certain things that they need to fully develop and properly develop as human beings as they grow, and they grow very quickly, and they have to learn how to walk and talk. And if things are stunted when you're young, it comes back to haunt you later in life, Sometimes I think the government dumbs us down on purpose. They don't want you too smart. Might start to ask too many questions. Yeah. Anyway, guys, I have also concerns about censorship. As many of you may have heard, we were banned on YouTube again, on our main YouTube channel, for a couple of weeks. So no posting over there. So we've lost our audience on that platform. And then we've got the whole Facebook censorship thing happening over, news content. So we're not fully activated on the Facebook front either. That's a big concern, big problem. We're maneuvering through that, though, by working with other live streamers. And in about a half an hour, I'll be on Twitter, at Twitter Spaces, with Lori and a whole bunch of other independent journalists and streamers, political personalities, talking about this issue, censorship. And for that reason, we are going to wrap up a little bit early tonight. It is now 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Do appreciate you guys all stopping by tonight. If you're inclined, you can support the channel at freedomreporters.com. Certainly appreciate the support we've had in the past. And we're going to continue to move forward and work to bring you as close to the truth as we can. And battle censorship. We're fighting for free speech, freedom of media right here. And you can also donate at maverickdonations.com. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing on our secondary YouTube channel. On the other YouTube channels carrying us across this new Maverick News network that we've established with other independent streamers. And also consider, please, subscribing over on Rumble. I'm running on 2 Rumble channels. Please subscribe to them both. That would help us out a lot, help us combat all this censorship, which I think is unethical, immoral, and just downright freaking evil. Very evil. We have a lot more to bring you tomorrow. I'll do my best to get back. I have to go to Toronto tomorrow, but I'll be preparing for tomorrow night's broadcast as I drive, as I always do when I make that trek to the Big Smoke and back. And I should be back here in time to join you again at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And what was that phrase that Oh, I won't use that one. I'll just use mine again tonight. Catch you back here tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.